Welcome to America's Pal. I'm your host, Darren White. This is the #1 rated podcast being recorded in my man cave. You can find us everywhere podcasts like to hang out. That's Spotify, iHeart, Apple. You can find us on YouTube and Rumble. If you're within the parameters of the alphabet soup groups, then you can find us probably on any of the networks associated with the FBI, CIA, DOD, DOE. Probably, pretty much all of them. So, the NSA. Don't forget the NSA. We don't want to leave them out. Anyway, if you like to email, you can email me at darren@americaspal.com. That's DARREN. You can also check out the website. I made a few tweaks to it to make it easier to find everywhere the podcast is. So if you just go to americaspal.com, then you can go to the podcast page, and you'll be able to see all the links to Spotify and iHeartRadio, Apple, YouTube, Rumble. Apparently, I need 15 subscribers on Rumble before it'll let me just share a link with my channel. So I don't get a channel, so I can share episodes, but not the channel. So YouTube, you can just find America's Pal on YouTube, and that'll take you right to the channel. You can see all the content and all of that. I am brand new to Twitter. I found a little blue bird. I don't think it's taking a blue pill. It's a blue bird, but it's interesting. It's a different platform. I fart around on Facebook, and you can find me Darren White on Facebook. You'll probably see my logo and the beard and all that good stuff. Don't have a Facebook page dedicated yet to America's Pal. But Twitter's an interesting echo chamber. It is, I guess, as you expand and get more and more followers, it'll change, but it's just another social media echo chamber, and it is interesting how the algorithm works, where it can really suck you in. It is a time sucker, just like all the other ones. You're probably not going to find me on TikTok. The Chinese Communist Party probably already has us on their radar, even though we are very, very small. But anyway, go to any of the platforms where you prefer to find our show, if that's on the podcast platform, Spotify, iHeart, any of those. Click the subscribe, give us a 5-star review, because I am that shameless. Remember, we don't have any sponsors. That's why I do my deadbeat sponsor ads. I make those up myself. So all of the goodness you get here, the Radio Bronze, is free. That's right. So anyway, give us a review if you'd like. And then, like I said, all the hate mail or positive input, feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email, Darren@americaspal.com, DARREN@americaspal.com. Today we're going to get into an interesting topic. There's a movie that's been put out by the Believe Entertainment Group, the same people that put out God's Not Dead and the Abby Johnson story Unplanned. This is a powerful, powerful film based on the book by Steve Deace. It's called Nefarious. It's in theaters now. It's still on some screens. It's a very limited release, simply because the spirit of the age here in Hollywood tends to tamp down any kind of film or entertainment that might have a different worldview. But this film, it'll shake you, and it will make you think. So we're going to go over that. I'll play the promo for that. And then after that, we're going to get into, this week, we're going to do a little bit of a news shotgun round, which is completely nonviolent. It's just a shotgun. It might be double-aught buck. It might be birdshot. It's just going to be a bunch of topics that are floating around that I kind of want to talk about. So before we get into any of the Weekly News Outbreak, any of that, we got to go to our first deadbeat sponsor, somebody you'll probably remember. This is the Florida Man. So listen, tune in every single week, as long as I'm around to produce it each week, which is sometimes doesn't happen because it's not my day job. But today, let's switch over to Florida Man, our first deadbeat sponsor break.
This portion of the program is brought to you by Florida Man Adventureland. If you're a Central Florida native and you're tired of all the theme parks built for the out-of-towners, then Florida Man Adventureland is the place for you. It's a theme park built for the Florida Man, by the Florida Man. If you think swimming with the dolphins is for chumps and you can swim with the alligators at the Florida Man Lagoon, fully stocked with gators big enough to take more than $1 worth of hamburger off of you. If you dabble in off-label chemistry, then be sure to experience our immersive Stump the Dentist experiment. If firearms suit your fancy, then check out the Florida Man Shooting Emporium. You can take a shot at a wild pig or of a rival gang from our authentic 1996 Chevrolet Impala. Forget all those butterfly encounters. We got a mosquito encounter that will knock your socks off. When you get a powerful thirst and a powerful hunger, then don't miss out on our bath salt buffet. It will expand your mind. The mouse might have a Chewbacca, but we got our very own skunk ape experience. Try to find him just after our lunch at the bath salt buffet. Don't waste time with a mouse, the whale, or a Hulk. Jumpstart your pickup and get down with us at the Florida Man Adventureland, located just east of East Orlando.
And welcome back to America's Pal. So let's dig right into this week's news outbreak. Longtime perpetual Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch the Turtle McConnell is rumored to be retiring soon. When asked, he said, after nearly a century of hating Republicans and a lucrative partnership with the Chinese government and our military-industrial complex, it may be time for me to pass my torch to someone who hates Republicans and our republic as much as I do. I wonder what Mitt Romney is up to. Befuddled President Joe Biden traveled to Northern Ireland recently. Documents within his official private security information were found on the street just outside of his hotel. They contain details about the operation, street closures, and security measures to keep him safe from harm. When asked about the debacle, Vice President Kamala Harris cackled nervously and then said, "How many windows must I provide?" From the Nothing to See Here desk, a dairy farm in Texas mysteriously burst into flames, incinerating roughly 18,000 cows. A machinery malfunction is reported as the potential source for the largest barn barbecue in history. Lab-grown meat aficionado and globalist Bill Gates said there's nothing to see here as he slipped out of his ninja outfit. World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab repeated his admonition that you will eat the bugs. A trove of leaked super-secret Pentagon documents was discovered on a gaming platform. The documents revealed actual U.S. troops in Ukraine, U.S. spying on allies, again, conflated Russian and Ukrainian casualties, 4 additional Chinese spy balloons that flew over the U.S., and the Dalai Lama's preferred tongue-sucking technique. More on that later. The FBI reacted to the leak of the DoD documents in record time and arrested 21-year-old Massachusetts National Guardsman Jack Douglas Teixeira for leaking said embarrassments. Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked about the speed and efficiency of the FBI, and he said, "We always keep close tabs on our plants." The 132-year-old senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, has asked to be temporarily replaced on the Senate Judiciary Committee after a bout of shingles and cognitive decline. When asked about the possible replacement, she said, The only one capable of filling my seat is the stroke-stricken senator from Pennsylvania, John the Lurch Fetterman. In an attempt to control the city's out-of-control rodent population, New York City is looking for its first-ever rat czar. The top requirement is simple. To become the rat, you must be the rat. Top contenders include New York Senator Chuck Schumer, Animal Planet substar Ernie Turtleman Brown Jr., live action, baby! California Congressman Adam Schiff, canceled cartoon star Pepe Le Pew, Utah Senator Mitt Romney, and Don Lemon from CNN. The Dalai Lama raised approximately 4 eyebrows worldwide when he kissed a young boy on the forehead and then stuck his tongue out and instructed the young boy to suck it. When asked about the bizarre behavior, a spokesman for the religious Buddhist leader of billions worldwide said it was a simple misunderstanding. This is how Tibetans ask youngsters if they would like a Bud Light on a hot afternoon with a powerful religious robe-wearing human idol. The Vatican applauded his response. Anheuser-Busch, the parent company of Bud Light, the favorite beer of rednecks and blue-collar Americans alike, lost approximately $6 billion after making trans activist Dylan Mulvaney the face of the brand. This just in, legendary badass Chuck Norris to be the new model for Victoria's Secret. Manslaughter charges were quickly dropped against actor Alec Baldwin last week, but not as quickly as the actor dropped his cinematographer with a round to the chest from a prop gun that was mysteriously loaded with live ammunition. Connecticut Congresswoman Rosa DeLaRue praised Transportation Secretary Buttigieg for ensuring that female crash test dummies will be used to promote dummy gender equity. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is reported to be thrilled for her turn behind the wheel of a real scientific test. And that sums up this week's news outbreak. All right, one more deadbeat sponsor, and then we're going to break right into this week's topic.
This portion of the program is brought to you by Irish Winter Bar Soap. Winter is coming. You're going to need a bar soap strong enough for the winter, not the spring. Irish Winter Bar Soap is strong enough to wash away 1,000 years of battle. Lifetime of pestilence and plague will melt away. It will wash away famine brought upon you by a winter's icy grasp. Irish Winter Bar Soap is made in a cauldron hotter than the very surface of 1,000 burning suns not seen here in generations. It's made with the life from the ashes of our ancestors who died in the battles of kings and emperors. And it's blended with the crumbled ruins of our castles from days long ago. Infused with the healing of the red clover, the bluebell, the meadowsweet, and just a dash of the poison of bog rosemary. Prepare for the winter with Irish Winter Bar Soap. Strong enough to wash away the winter as you pray for springtime.
And welcome back. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, you might notice this in front of me. This is my cordless hole puncher. Probably going to be making some content kind of directed at that, possibly in different kinds of episodes, a different format. But I've been going to the range every single week for about 2 months now. And even though it's been years and years and years since I was actively, going to the range or doing anything firearm related, I've had a lot of fun. I've got about 1,700 rounds through this SIG-X macro. Only 3 malfunctions, and all 3 of those were with Winchester range ammo. So that kind of tells me it's probably ammo related, but this thing has been great. So Anyway, the reason why it's on camera, why you can see it, is we're going to test a thing about gun violence. So in the upcoming videos and all of that, pretty much going to have this cordless hole puncher on camera, and we're going to see if it does any gun violence. So if it does anything out of the ordinary, it's right now it's in my crossbreed holster. If it does anything violent, definitely email me, Darren@americaspal.com. That's DARREN. Let me know if this thing does anything violent while we're watching. Obviously, if you're in the Alphabet Soup groups, then you already know that it's here, and you're probably watching it right now. So let's just move on. Okay. Nope, still hadn't done anything yet. Nope. Okay, just watch it. And anyway, this week I want to talk about a movie. And not only am I not a professional podcast host, I'm also not a professional movie reviewer. But having worked at Blockbuster back in the late 90s, I feel like I'm some level of expert when it comes to movies. I still have some VHS tapes, no VCR anymore. I don't know why I still have those. But I do have about 700 DVDs, and I don't know, there's something about DVDs or a disc that you can put into a DVD player and watch your movie. You don't have to worry about streaming and internet connection. And for me, I still think the audio and video is better on a DVD than anything you're going to see streaming, unless you have really high quality stuff. But one thing the technology is irritating me is smart DVD players. You know, I really get annoyed. I want a DVD player that just plays DVDs, can just do that well. But what do I get? I put the DVD in, and the Sony DVD player, well, it wants to talk to the internet. It wants to talk to all the other devices in the house. And I have to stand there and wait. And then it initializes. And then it's asking, do I want to play a DVD? Or perhaps I should do something else. Perhaps I should use the DVD player to stream something on Roku or any other services I don't have. So it really irritates me. But anyway, even though I'm not a professional movie reviewer, I'm not a professional firearm reviewer, I appreciate both, and so I'm going to give this my best shot to review a movie that I think is extremely important. It's a movie, it's called Nefarious. I'll play the trailer here in just a minute. It's, if any of you that share our worldview, maybe a biblical worldview, or anything different that's outside of our culture today, when it comes to movies, music, and anything like that, it's as if we have to filter everything that we see through this lens of, is this going to have some nonsense message? Is it a message film? A lot of your director-based films where they focus on your directors, they all have a message that they're trying to put out. And Disney has perfected that, obviously. So you go to the movies these days, and you, rather than get entertained, you get a barrage of whatever message that is of the spirit of the age. That particular time, this is what message we want to share, be it an environmentalist one, be it a anti-American one, be it an anti-faith one, anything. But there's always a message that seems to filter through these movies, and they come through the screen. So rather than sit there and enjoy an escape, everything gets permeated with some kind of a worldly message that, frankly, it's not entertaining. Like I said, I worked at Blockbuster. I loved movies. I loved going to the movies, kicking back for 2 hours or however long the movie was, not be inundated with any special messaging. This is an incredible film. The picture was great. The story was great. It kept you involved. You don't get that anymore. Very, very rarely. And there's a lack in entertainment of just, hey, there's no clear-cut message except be pro-American, be pro, just enjoy the thing. Top Gun, I think Maverick really nailed it, really hit it out of the park, and more movies are starting to kind of trickle through where it's like, hey, maybe we ought to lay off the messaging. But then at the same time, there's never been in a real theatrical release up until recently any counterpunch to a message-based film where walking into it that you might be able to go see this film and experience a biblical worldview, a message that does share that. And at the same time, without being corny and dumb, and there are so many faith-based films that, sure, they speak to an important message, but it tends to fall on the deaf ears because there's no real storytelling. So Steve Deace, he's a radio host on the Blaze Radio Network. He's an author. He has been front and center fighting the COVID nonsense. He's written bestsellers, and he wrote a book, I think it was back in 2013, called A Nefarious Plot. Essentially, it's about a demon telling what they would do to subvert the culture away from God. And the rights to the book, they got picked up by the Believe Entertainment Group, who put out the Abby Johnson story, Unplanned, the abortion film that, oddly enough, was rated R in an attempt by the Motion Picture Association to keep Christians who would typically never go to the theater, or church groups who wouldn't go to a theater and endorse an R-rated film, to keep the box office numbers down, and basically a warning shot that don't you try this kind of message film. This is, you're in our sandbox, stay in your lane. And then they put out the very, very popular God's Not Dead movies. And so they picked up the rights to Steve Deace's book, A Nefarious Plot. And the thing about the movie is it's not a spoiler to the book. It's the way he describes it is it's a sequel. And the message in this film is very, very powerful. So before I get into it, I want to play the trailer and let me know what you think.
Hello?
You should have accepted my offer, James.
Execution scheduled for 11 p.m. But he's trying to convince us he's gone insane.
And therefore incapable of being executed.
I need you to prove he's faking it.
Edward? I'm gonna ask you some questions.
I'm not Edward. I'm a demon.
Demons aren't really a thing. What happened to Edward?
We own him.
We?
He's a master manipulator. You have your head so twisted around you think you're the killer, not him.
And give me something to make me believe you. Prove to me you're a demon.
It's probably just a coincidence.
I want to talk to
The real
Edward.
Makes me do that. I can't stop him.
I need you to see something. You got a fan. Did the same thing with all his victims.
Help me!
I'm trying to, Edward, but you have to answer my questions. You have to tell me the truth.
It won't let me!
It can go away. It can go away. Yes?
No. It's starting to happen. Can you feel it, James? Can you feel it? Hurry. 3, 2, 1.
think it's time we tell you exactly what it is that we'd like you to do.
As you picked up from the trailer there, and I encourage you to watch this on YouTube or Rumble as well. For starters, go to nefariousmovie.com. You'll be able to find showtimes and all of that stuff there. It's probably not going to be in theaters very long because of how the Motion Picture Association works, how they pick movies that get screen time and all of that. But this movie, we went and saw it last week. I can't tell you how powerful this movie was to see it, especially seeing it on the big screen. You see, obviously what this is a movie. It's about a serial killer who on the day of his execution claims that he's possessed by a demon. Obviously, the state law says that they have to determine whether or not he's crazy and therefore eligible for execution or not. He's been sentenced to death row. The actors are Sean Patrick Flanery. You might remember him from Boondock Saints and also Powder, and even going way back, the Indiana Jones Chronicles. He's cast on the other side of the table by Jordan Belfi, who plays a psychiatrist to come in and interview and evaluate to see if he's actually crazy or if he's not, and therefore able to stand for execution. This movie is essentially two men sitting across the table from each other, and they are in a battle. A psychological battle, but then as the movie progresses, as it gets farther and farther into it, it does become this battle between good and evil. And Sean Patrick Flanery's performance in this film it's beyond intense. The way he plays the serial killer, his name was Edward. And Sean Patrick Flanery, he plays Edward and Nefarious, this demon, at the same time. He switches in between the two seamlessly. And the torture that he puts this man Edward through, and the way it shows how he took control over a process of years and years and years. Then he goes into explaining the successes of not just demonic possession of Edward, but a global one. And Jordan Belfi plays he's a psychiatrist. He plays an atheist, doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in the devil, doesn't believe in evil, he says evil isn't a diagnosis. And he's finding himself in the middle of a spiritual war that he doesn't believe in. What was one of the, and somebody else has said about the film that explains why demons, why the devil hates the human race. And they hate you because God loves you. And the entire film works around how they have corrupted the human species, the gods, those that were created in God's own image, and little by little by little have inhabited. And he uses that word, let me inhabit you. And it is incredibly powerful. Sean Patrick Flanery's role, the way he played the role, it's intense. It's not like anything you see on the screen anymore, where somebody is that. It's not written and acted for effect. There's no special effects. Or very, very little. There's not any of that big supernatural thriller kind of film. And it's a huge, powerful message that, yes, can be overt at times. But at the same time, wow, what a message. And it really gets you thinking. We saw this last week. It still gnaws at me. There's a scene, and I'm not going to spoil it. There won't be any spoilers in this semi-professional Radio Bronze review of the film Nefarious. But there's a scene that involves a cheeseburger, extra thick chocolate shake, and fries. You want to get broken if your heart wants to break for someone. The cheeseburger scene is it's you don't see that. You don't see anybody playing a role like that. Sean Patrick Flannery's performance has been compared by some to Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. Excuse me. But I'd say it's more powerful because it's not just a psychological thriller. Now, the movie is rated R for what nobody really knows. There's one scene that is really, really, really intense. Is it graphic? No. There's no blood and guts. There's absolutely no swearing in it. There's no F-bombs. There's no gore. There's no nudity. There's nothing that would typically give a movie like this an R rating. Even PG-13. I'd say it's probably, if you include that the one intense scene that without spoiling, that intense scene, probably a higher PG-13 film. But this is not worthy of an R rating, and it was done by design. It is to keep, the same way they did with Abby Johnson's film, it is to keep church groups from seeing something that has a message, to seeing a movie on the big screen that has a message that is from a biblical worldview. So I encourage your youth groups, your church groups to go see this while we still can in the theater. It's probably going to be on screens for maybe another week or two, and they're going to get more and more limited. They dropped when they dropped it, it released on April 14th this month, and there wasn't anything really big up against it. So all of a sudden, all the studio houses Sony puts out, they dropped The Pope's Exorcist with, what's his name? I just drew a blank. Gladiator actor. Goodness, I'm supposed to be good at this. Anyway, The Pope's Exorcist, they dropped another one, another demonic style film and all of that to kind of muddy the water, to give audiences a big. Now, granted, the Pope's Exorcist had been filmed, been recorded, and sat on the shelf for 2 years. And the day they announce that Nefarious is going to open in theaters on April the 14th, when you know it, all of a sudden Sony drops The Pope's Exorcist the same weekend. And then there was another one, the Nicolas Cage Dracula film, same deal, been sitting in the can for a couple of years. And the Nicolas Cage Dracula one, Renfield, it's called. Just the previews, I'm like, this is so dumb, and it's all gore. It just looks dumb, but it's another distraction. I will warn you that if you do take your church group or your youth group to see the film, I would recommend that you not bring them in for the previews, the movie previews that show before, because all the films are rated R that they're previewing. There's a lot of content just in the previews leading up to Nefarious, which is a film with a biblical worldview. And the content, it was there. I don't really get squeamish and stuff, but at the same time, now it is definitely definitely those previews were enough for me. Didn't want to look at the screen. I didn't want to hear it. I was like, I'm here to see Nefarious. So if you do bring your church group or youth group or anything like that, I would recommend waiting until after the preview. So maybe 15 minutes after the movie starts, so it can get through all of the spirit of the age nonsense, because it's almost like, let's throw everything at this movie. All of the battles that were fought to get this movie released. It doesn't have a huge budget. I think they spent $4 million on that and $3 million in marketing. But what they produced, what came out of that film was very, very, very powerful. And it shows the nature of our society, how easily it can be inhabited by this evil that is surrounding us at all times. And what's interesting about it is that Jordan Belfie's character, the psychiatrist, doesn't believe in any of it. And yet at the same time, he's found on the front lines of it. And then he's found immersed in it. And then he finds that his entire life, this evil has been working around him and taking these little jabs and a little bit by little bit by little bit at a time has managed to begin to control him, and he doesn't even see it. And then he has that moment where he does. In that particular scene, let's just say he's racing to find a phone. I can't begin to tell you how terrified you are for him that he gets to that phone in time. So the movie itself, just the way it's written, the way those two actors, they played off of each other. They had a very limited amount of time to film together. The way they played off of each other, these two men, basically the entire film, for the most part, is shot two men sitting across from each other in a prison, having a conversation. The way it was shot, the way this movie was written, the story itself, I can't begin to tell you how powerful and important this message is. This is a message. It's not based just on inhabiting one person. Like I said before, this is how evil has inhabited society. Part of it to torture God, but then part of it to get right what they feel they did wrong and allowed Christ to enter this world. And then to allow Christ to defeat the darkness. And it's them trying to set that right. And how they've managed to do it throughout all of civilization and continue to do so. And it's so prevalent. And you watch how the interaction is between them, and you can see it. You can see it in our daily lives. We see Roe versus Wade overturn, and what happens? It is like throwing holy water in The Exorcist, where he's throwing holy water, and that reaction, that visceral, nasty reaction, the screaming of you take something evil away, and that reaction, or the reaction to anything that is counter to this bizarre culture that we find ourselves in today, anything that's counter to it, and the idea that you can carve up children and change their genders and things like that, which is it's a Isle of Dr. Moreau level of insanity. And these people, these groups nationwide are lashing out in such violent and ugly ways to defend that right, to mutilate children, to kill them inside the womb. And the way this works is it's the Overton window, where what society is allowed to see in this narrow window, what they find acceptable, keeps shifting farther and farther and farther one direction until that pendulum begins to swing, as it has in societies for all of civilization. That Overton window will finally find that this is not acceptable anymore. And it shifts. But what we find, our society, our culture finds acceptable is not in some sort of a natural just progression of, hey, give them an inch, take a mile. No, we are fighting evil forces. I can't tell you how many times you see this same reaction throughout society, how people lash out when something is challenged or threatened, that if you share any biblical worldview, you would find it abhorrent, you would find it evil, you would find it despicable, and you try and just push back against it. And the violence this woke culture will use to go after you, this no holds bar, they will cancel you, they will destroy you, they will do whatever they can. And this movie portrays, through two men sitting across from a table from each other, this spiritual battle that goes on whether you believe in it or not. So I do encourage you, go to whoisnefarious.com, look this film up. It is by far one of the most powerful films I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them. Like I said, I'm an expert. I worked at Blockbuster, so I should know. But anyway, I do encourage you, definitely look up whoisnefarious.com. It is a film that it's an important one, a film that has to be made. I encourage you to support it. I encourage you to share with others, your friends, people that it's not geared as in a way that it's marketed as a preachy kind of film like you would see in some of the other faith-based films. All this is, it's a psychological and spiritual thriller that does come from a biblical worldview. Instead of your other psychological spiritual thrillers, your Exorcists, your Omen, your things like that, where it comes from a more of a Hollywood's worldview, and the only thing that can save it is a religious thing, where a religious, it's why you always see them, involving the Catholic faith and all of that. This one's different because it comes from the perspective of a biblical worldview and not written from the secular worldview. It is, yes, there's a message. And we have been dealing for decades with message-based films, but this one's got a biblical worldview and an important message. And I do encourage you, go to whoisnefarious.com. Look it up. Sean Patrick Flannery and Jordan Belfi are phenomenal in that film, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed, and I don't think your church group or your youth groups would be doing justice if they don't go see this and don't learn how to engage, don't learn to see the world through this lens, because this battle rages around us whether you want to see it or not. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up that, but let's move into our shotgun round of the news. We got just a few minutes here left. A lot of crazy stuff's going on around us all the time, but here's just a few of the headlines that kind of jumped out at me. The Donald Trump DeSantis nonsense is still raging, and it's getting dumber. In the past couple of weeks, Donald Trump has sided with Disney. He's sided with Anheuser-Busch or InBev. He's now aligning with a lot of Republicans against the victory on abortion, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because they want to blame something of the same battle I was just talking about. They want to blame that for the reason why they lost in the 2022 midterms. They want to blame abortion. Why? Because doing the right thing is always a good scapegoat for your own failures. And the Republican Party has castrated itself to such a point that now Donald Trump says, I want to win. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the most important win of any Republican for the past 50 years, take that most important win and then shit can it. And just set it off to the side and say, you know what? That was garbage. That was a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe saving 60 million lives is a good idea to me. Maybe not being evil as a culture, not sacrificing children on the outstretched arms of Moloch to burn, to die, to kill them. Maybe a culture that accepts that is doomed to begin with. But Donald Trump wants to win. The Republican Party wants to win. So they blame doing what's right. I guarantee you that turning your back on saving the lives of children is turning your back on this country. And it is a losing proposition. I guarantee you that. So Donald Trump is lining himself up with the mucky mucks against Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis hasn't announced, he hasn't said he's running for president. It is the largest, open secret in politics that, yes, he will announce, Ron DeSantis will announce his run for president next month after the Florida legislative session, which, as a lifelong 45-year resident of Florida, I like Ron DeSantis. Now, the difference is that I don't get into hero worship when it comes to politicians. Left or right, nobody should. So I have never been in the camp of Donald Trump only is our salvation. I talked about this, I think, on our last episode. This Donald Trump or nobody thing, that's not the ticket. Donald Trump had a lot of good wins. Roe versus Wade. Now, granted, the Supreme Court justices that he replaced, that he put on the court and that made it through the confirmation hearings, they're not originalists. They're not constitutional originalists. They tend to stay on the side of precedent. In other words, old law makes reinforces new law. So precedent, is it constitutional or not, rarely comes up in the Supreme Court anymore. So the Roe versus Wade was an unexpected opportunity that the Supreme Court actually fell on the right side of the Constitution. Just they managed to fall off their own apple cart and do that. But he did stack up a lot of L's for me. COVID being number one. Appointing Chris Wray as head of the FBI. That could be another one. The fact that he keeps commending people on the left that despise conservative values. He keeps saying great things about Gavin Newsom. He was nice to me, so how can I say anything bad about him? Again, with Christopher Wray, why would you put somebody like that in charge of the FBI for him to only turn around and Joe Biden to keep him on staff as the head of the FBI? Why? Because obviously Chris Wray had no problem writing a letter to the School Board Association telling them to treat parents who stand up and speak against literature that's being taught in the schools, curriculums, the CRT, the Marxist education that's being pushed, parents that are standing up because their daughter was raped by a transgender so-and-so in the bathroom, a dude that wears a skirt occasionally so he has access to the bathrooms. These are the parents that the FBI, Christopher Wray, Donald Trump's appointee, is going after and using the Patriot Act to treat them as if they are domestic terrorists. So being concerned about your child's education, being concerned about your child's safety in school, according to Donald Trump's appointee, Christopher Wray, is domestic terrorism. The same Christopher Wray that is directing the FBI to go into churches and infiltrate churches and look for more domestic terrorists, to create domestic terrorists. So, yeah, Donald Trump's got some L's. And you know who Donald Trump lost? See, Donald Trump didn't win in 2020. I don't know if can accept it. And at the same time, yes, the voter irregularities, and there's a chance that no, he did in fact win. But the way he has gone about trying to rectify that doesn't work. There wasn't anything in the Constitution. There was a legal way to fight it. He had 6 weeks to do it, and he wasted time with Sidney Powell, and Lynn Wood. So he lost the portion of the electorate that he lost were independents and suburban white women who voted for him in historic numbers in 2016. He lost that demographic, which obviously, if you're a 40% country where 40% will vote Republican, 40% vote Democrat, the independents in the middle, they're the ones that you have to try and sway. Nothing he has done since is going to sway them. On the other hand, we have Ron DeSantis here in our state, the free state of Florida, who at times did buck the COVID mandates, the COVID response. He went along with it, the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. He went through all of that. And then as things started getting dumber and dumber and just more and more irrational throughout COVID, he started putting some checks on it. And Donald Trump was furious when he decided that he was going to reopen the state. And now all of a sudden, Donald Trump, afterwards, now that he's running for again, he's gaslighting the American public about Ron DeSantis, saying that he's a terrible governor, blah, 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 blah. All of this. Ron DeSantis won twice. He also won by an almost 20% margin, the largest margin in Florida history, after governing as a conservative. So this dumb Trump gaslighting assault on Ron DeSantis, who hasn't even announced, I don't know if he's trying to punch himself out or if he's suffering from the same dementia that Joe Biden is. But whatever course he's on, if he sticks on it, I am not an only Trumper. I'm not a only DeSantis guy. I am what is best for the nation, and in the primaries, I will vote how I feel about that. Now, granted, I was tired of saying that I'm going to vote for the Republican nominee, whoever it is. I'm going to vote my principles in the primaries, but then when it comes around to the general, I'm going to do the right thing. Yeah, that got my vote for Mitt Romney, John McCain. Yeah, that didn't work out great, did it? So I have said for a long time now that, you know what? No, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to vote for the Republican nominee moving forward. I'm done with that nonsense. And then now we have Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, who are really the only two contenders. One of them will be the nominee. And I can actually happily say I would vote for either one of them. Problem is that Donald Trump is making it a lot harder for me to want to own that. And we get through the general, and more than likely, Donald Trump may become the nominee if something doesn't happen, if his health, deteriorates or anything like that. But he's making it harder for me to want to enthusiastically vote for him again. I did twice. Well, let's see. I voted for him the first time trepidatiously. I don't think we're going to get to the other ones in the shotgun round, so let's just stick with the Trump DeSantis thing. But I was concerned about him. I said that Trump was a populist. I was concerned about, could he govern as a conservative? Would he? Well, in 2016, apparently, conservative values were on the market. Were on the market. They were what the American people wanted, and so he followed those wins. And he said a lot of things, accomplished some of them, made a lot of promises, kept a lot of them, had a lot of wins. And now he did not win in 2020, or he is not the president, regardless of where you stand on the voter, the rolls, the 81 million for Joe, the 76 for him. I don't see how it's possible Joe got 81 million votes. There's not that many ice cream parlors. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is that now here he is, and he has to campaign against somebody who is governed purely as a conservative. now he's calling DeSantis a Soros plant. Ron DeSantis is the only governor in the country that fired a Soros DA for refusing to prosecute Florida law because it doesn't align with the George Soros model. So, and he's publicly said it. He's also gone against the mouse. And that's another thing. This goldfish memory bank of Republicans that say that what Ron DeSantis did against Disney, see, at the time, everybody was cheering it because of what they were doing. That spirit of the age, that demonic nature of grooming children in our schools was the law that was being proposed. And then they cloaked their hesitancy, their anger against it, and named it the Don't Say Gay bill. There's nothing about it that doesn't say gay, that says anything against the gay culture, any of that. All it says is that teachers are there to teach your children specifics and education. They are not there to change your child's gender. They're not there to teach them about sexual activities. They're not there to teach them how to practice different kinds of sex. They're not there to teach them any of those things. That does not belong in curriculum. If that's something that their parents are fine with, but everything in that bill said that nothing gets to the student that doesn't get seen by the parent. So that's what the battle was. Disney decided, because a part of their workforce bought the bait of the Don't Say Gay thing. He's just going to hate gays, which isn't the case at all. It's just a matter of let children be children, give them education, and then let them do what they want to when they become an adult. That's all it was. Disney decided they would go on this huge campaign against this new law, and at the same time, campaign against it, pull funding, all of that good stuff, do the normal, woke cancellation thing. And then the governor said, fine, you've been behaving as your own government, as a corporation with no rules from the outside, from the state government or anything. It's time you lost that. And everybody cheered. But now that it's dragged on a little bit, and Donald Trump is trying to run left of Ron DeSantis, he has to side with Disney on this. And the Republican Party is like, hey, this is a bad move, this whole Disney thing. We should move on. Well, the thing is, Ron DeSantis isn't a globalist. He's a governor of the state of Florida, and our children do not need indoctrination, be that from Marxism or culture. They need an education. So I am concerned that Donald Trump is going to make it difficult for me to vote for him enthusiastically, if at all, if he stays on this populist leftist path that he's all of a sudden pivoted to. I would urge you, just think. Stop. Your Messiah is not a politician. Our republic isn't a politician. Our republic is you. Our culture isn't our republic. Our culture is destroying it under the name of democracy. So I urge you, we got one more deadbeat sponsor break. Florida Man's Pun and Done. Then we're going to close things out. This portion of the program is being brought to you by Colonel Jessup's Gitmo Bay Cafe. I eat my breakfast 300 yards from 4,000 Cubans who are trained to kill me. You know this, but you never bothered to find out what I actually have for breakfast. Every morning at 0500, I go down to Colonel Jessup's Gitmo Bay Cafe and order myself a Code Red. What's a Code Red? Well, I thought you'd never ask. The Code Red is 2 oversized huevos served over toast with sausage and a cup of espresso so strong you'll be able to march for days without collapsing. If you think a Code Red may be bad for your health, then I suggest you've never faced the working end of a Soviet-made Cuban AK-47 assault rifle.
If you're from the health department and want to investigate me, then take caution. I am a fair guy, but this forking heat is making me absolutely crazy. If you want to investigate me, roll the dice and take your chances. Don't you think for 1 second you can come down here, flash a badge, and make me nervous. If you'd like to order a code red from Colonel Jessup's Gitmo Bay Cafe, remember, you gotta ask me nicely. I want you to stand there and with your Harvard mouth extend me some forking courtesy. Until next time, walk softly and carry an armored tank division, I always say.
And welcome back to America's Pal. In closing, let's get right to Florida Man's Pun and Done. You see, this farmer one day, he happened to, pardon me, this farmer one day, he walked all the way over to the next farm over, and he knocks on the front door, and little Johnny answers the door. And he says, "Hello there, little Johnny. Is your mommy and daddy home?" And Johnny says, "Well, no, sir. They both went into town. I don't expect them to be back till well after dark." So the farmer, he kind of stands there nervously for a second, and he says, "Okay, how about your brother, your older brother Howard? Is Howard home? Can I talk to him?" And little Johnny, he said, "Hey, he went to town with them. I don't expect them to be back till well after dark. Like I said, if you need any tools, but Dad, he told me where everything's at. I could be happy to show you where everything's at if you need to borrow some tools or maybe some extra feed or something." And the farmer, he stands there for a little bit and he says, "No, Johnny, unfortunately, I have to talk to your father about your brother Howard getting my daughter pregnant." So Johnny stood there for a second, and he thought, and he scratched his head, and he goes, "Well, you're probably better off talking to Pop about that, because I know that to stud the bulls, he gets about $550 each for that, and if you want to stud one of the pigs, well, that's about $150 each. But come to think of it, I don't know what Dad charges for Howard services." Anyway, moving on. Tune in next week. As always, I would definitely recommend you take your family, go see Nefarious. Whoisnefarious.com or nefariousmovie.com. Go see that. It's a cultural film that you really, really, really will need to see. But until then, remember, it's a republic if you can keep it. Bye. Bye, NSA. Bye, FBI. We'll see you, Alphabet Soup Group. See you next time.